Imagine being a man whose presence could command not only a room but an entire street. Now, I'm not here to sell you some magical fairy tale. Watching a single video won't transform you into a Churchill. Let's face it, no one in the last century has matched his level of leadership. However, what we can do is look at his methods and study how he mastered the art of leadership. After all, Winston Churchill wasn't born as a genius leader. He had challenges, a speech impediment, poor academic performance, and a history with alcohol. But at one point, he decided to turn things around. He started focusing on studying the art of leadership, psychology, body language, and public speaking. He took it upon himself to consciously perfect every gesture, every word, and even the silences. Today, let's break down the 9 core principles that shaped his leadership style and see exactly how he did it. 1. Take your time. Winston Churchill is often celebrated as one of the greatest public speakers in history, a man whose voice could rally entire nations and inspire millions to action. But here's the fascinating part. His speech wasn't always so smooth. In fact, Churchill had a significant speech impediment, a lisp, and when he spoke too quickly, he would often stutter or struggle to pronounce certain words. For most people, this would have been a significant barrier, especially for someone in such a high-profile position. Public speaking was a constant part of his life, from delivering wartime speeches to addressing Parliament. But instead of trying to hide or fix this challenge, Churchill took a different approach. He didn't let it define him. Rather, he embraced his natural speaking style and used it to his advantage. What Churchill realized was this: rather than rushing to speak, he would slow down and take his time. He made deliberate pauses, carefully choosing each word before he spoke. This wasn't just a tactic to overcome his speech impediment. It became a tool for commanding authority. He didn't speak hastily or try to cover up his flaws. Instead, he used his pauses to add weight and meaning to each sentence. This kind of measured approach gave his words a gravity that spoke louder than if he had rushed through them. The power of taking your time in communication isn't just about making your words more impactful. It's about demonstrating control and composure. When we speak too quickly or out of turn, it can make us appear less confident, as if we're scrambling to keep up with the conversation or the situation. Churchill's method, on the other hand, made him appear deliberate and in control. It allowed him to think through his words and keep the upper hand in any conversation. 2. Prepare for serious matters. Preparation was the backbone of Winston Churchill's leadership. It wasn't just his natural talent or charisma that made him one of the most influential figures of his time. It was his relentless commitment to preparation, which he treated as an essential part of his strategy. Before delivering any important speech, Churchill would spend anywhere between 6 to 8 hours meticulously preparing. He wasn't just writing notes and reading over speeches. He was rehearsing, refining his words, and thinking through every possible scenario that might come up during his address. Churchill didn't leave anything to chance. He anticipated the hardest questions, the sharpest criticisms, and any other curveballs that might be thrown his way. This level of preparation gave him a distinct advantage. When the time came to speak, he was never caught off guard. No matter how tough the situation, Churchill could remain calm and composed. He wasn't rattled by tough reporters or unexpected challenges because he knew he had done the work in advance. This allowed him to stay in control, respond confidently, and demonstrate his authority in any situation. Preparation was not just about having the right words ready. It was about mentally and emotionally equipping himself for the challenges ahead. Think about it this way. Preparation is like being a hunter going into the woods. You can't hunt a bear without the right tools. A bear isn't going to go down with your bare hands. You need the proper weapon, whether it's a rifle, strategy, or insight. In the same way, you can't enter important discussions or make significant decisions without preparation. Without it, you're entering the arena unarmed, at a disadvantage, and vulnerable to failure. It's not enough to show up and hope for the best. You need to be armed with knowledge, strategy, and confidence to handle whatever comes your way. 3. Listen more than you speak. Winston Churchill is often remembered for his powerful speeches, his ability to inspire nations with just a few words. Yet, ironically, he was known to listen far more than he spoke in most personal and professional interactions. This might seem counterintuitive, especially for a man who was famous for his rhetoric, but it was one of the key factors that made him an extraordinary leader. He understood something very important. People love to talk about themselves. In fact, most people find it more comfortable to share their own stories and experiences than to listen to others. In a world where everyone is trying to be heard, Churchill's strategy was simple but highly effective. He listened. When you meet someone, how often do you find yourself thinking about what you're going to say next rather than focusing on what they're saying? How many times have you forgotten someone's name in the first few minutes of a conversation because you're too busy thinking about your own introduction? It's something we all do. But Churchill knew that if you let others talk about their passions, interests, and experiences, you not only make them feel valued, but you also become the most interesting person in the room without even having to say much at all. The beauty of listening is that it creates a natural, engaging flow in any conversation. When you allow others to share their thoughts, they naturally become more drawn to you. They're fascinated by the fact that you've given them the space to speak, and in doing so, you become more relatable and approachable. By listening attentively and genuinely, you're also guiding the conversation into their narrative, allowing them to express themselves fully, and that's when the magic happens. People will open up to you, sharing their stories and secrets, all while you remain an enigma, not revealing much about yourself. The key is not to interrupt or jump in with your own opinions, but to actively listen, showing interest and empathy. Churchill had a remarkable ability to make others feel like they were the most important person in the room. 4. Treat your space like a battlefield. Winston Churchill was not just a master of words and leadership strategies. He was also a tactical genius when it came to how he positioned himself in any room. Whether it was a high-stakes meeting or the heat of parliamentary debates, Churchill paid close attention to where he physically placed himself. He would always choose a corner, ensuring he had a spot where no one could sit directly behind him. This wasn't about being picky or needing comfort. It was a deliberate, strategic choice. By positioning himself in this way, Churchill ensured that he had a clear view of the entire room. He could see the reactions of everyone around him, read their body language, and gauge the mood in real time. He knew that the moment he entered a room, he needed to maintain control, and the first step in doing that was controlling his physical position. This gave him an immense psychological advantage. He could watch his opponents, listen to their tone, and observe any shifts in the conversation that might give him a clue about their intentions. Whether he was in a formal discussion or a heated debate, Churchill's awareness of the room around him was always sharp. It gave him the ability to adjust, pivot, and respond with precision. But this strategy went even further. Churchill was also very aware of his escape routes. He didn't want to be trapped in a situation where he had no options or flexibility. He understood that if you're boxed in, whether physically, mentally, or emotionally, you lose your ability to act freely. By positioning himself in a corner with clear sightlines and multiple exits, he always retained the upper hand. If things turned against him, he knew how to remove himself from a situation without losing face or control. 5. Move with purpose. Winston Churchill wasn't just a master of words and strategy. He was a model of precision in his physical movements. In a world where many leaders today seem to constantly shift their weight, gesture wildly, or fidget nervously, Churchill understood the power of deliberate action. He moved with intention and purpose, carefully considering every gesture and every motion he made. In fact, one of his defining characteristics was his ability to move as little as possible, understanding that every movement required energy and should only be used when truly necessary. This was a stark contrast to many modern leaders who often squander their presence through excessive movement. They might shift their weight from one foot to the other, nod repeatedly, or gesture aimlessly while speaking. These actions may seem like natural habits, but they actually deplete energy and weaken their impact. Churchill knew that true power doesn't come from constant movement. It comes from being still, deliberate, and purposeful. By minimizing unnecessary movements, he kept his audience focused on his words and presence, not his body language. The stillness he projected created a sense of command and authority. Eastern philosophies, particularly in martial arts like Kung Fu, emphasize the concept of conserving energy. The idea is simple but powerful. Never waste energy. Never rush when you can move slowly and steadily, and never act impulsively. Every movement should be calculated, purposeful, and executed at the right moment. This concept transcends physical movement and can be applied to many aspects of life, from decision-making to leadership. By conserving your energy and only using it when it counts, you become more effective in everything you do. 6. Maintain a power stance. Winston Churchill's presence wasn't just about what he said, it was also about how he physically carried himself. One of the most notable features of his leadership was his posture. Churchill was known for his strong, stable stance. He didn't slouch or hunch. Instead, he stood with his feet shoulder-width apart, knees slightly bent, and his shoulders back. This posture wasn't just a matter of comfort or habit. It was a deliberate choice to convey strength, confidence, and readiness. In many ways, his body language acted as a silent message to everyone around him. I am in control, and I am prepared to face whatever challenge comes my way. The power stance Churchill maintained wasn't just about physical stability. It reflected his psychological state. His body position was a visual representation of his inner strength and unshakable resolve. Standing tall with his feet firmly planted signaled to others that he was grounded and steadfast, much like a warrior preparing for battle. He didn't sway or shift his weight nervously. Instead, he exuded an air of quiet confidence, showing he was ready for whatever the situation demanded. In leadership, body language can often speak louder than words. The way you stand, sit, or move can communicate authority, confidence, and control without you having to say anything at all. Churchill instinctively knew that how you present yourself physically plays a critical role in how others perceive you. When you adopt a strong power stance, you convey not only physical stability, but also psychological readiness. People naturally gravitate toward those who appear grounded, confident, and in control. It commands respect, and it reassures others that you can handle any challenges or adversity that may come your way. 7. Use humor as a weapon. Winston Churchill was not just a great orator and strategic thinker, he was also a master of humor. But unlike the typical use of humor to entertain or make friends, Churchill used it as a powerful weapon to disarm his opponents, deflect criticism, and assert his dominance in a conversation. His humor wasn't designed to win people over or to make people laugh for the sake of amusement. Instead, it was an instrumental tool for maintaining control in difficult situations and undermining those who tried to challenge him. One of the most famous examples of Churchill's use of humor as a weapon came when Lady Astor, a political rival, made a biting comment. "If I were your wife, I'd put poison in your coffee." Without missing a beat, Churchill quipped back, "If I were your husband, I'd drink it." This devastatingly witty retort not only diffused the insult, but also put Lady Astor in her place, leaving her speechless. It was a perfect example of how Churchill could take the sting out of an attack with a sharp, calculated response. 8. Know your weaknesses. Winston Churchill was a man who understood his strengths, but perhaps more importantly, he knew his weaknesses. Unlike many who try to hide their flaws or pretend they don't exist, Churchill faced his weaknesses head-on and used them to his advantage. He was fully aware that he had a lisp, struggled with alcohol, and had health issues. These personal challenges could have easily been used as points of attack by his political enemies, and yet Churchill didn't shy away from them. Instead, he acknowledged these flaws and confronted them directly, using them as a defense against any potential criticisms. This approach might seem counterintuitive. Most people are taught to hide their weaknesses and focus only on their strengths. But Churchill understood that by embracing his flaws, he could disarm his critics before they even had the chance to make a move. When people see that you are comfortable with your imperfections, they are less likely to use them against you. Churchill's self-awareness and confidence in his imperfections gave him an unmatched ability to control how others perceived him. It removed the sting from any criticisms related to his lisp or drinking habits because he had already acknowledged them openly. 9. Use failure as fuel. Winston Churchill's life was not without its failures. In fact, some of his most pivotal moments came after experiencing crushing setbacks. One of the most significant of these failures occurred in 1915 during the Gallipoli campaign, a military operation that he oversaw as the First Lord of the Admiralty. The campaign, which was supposed to be a decisive Allied victory, ended in disaster. It resulted in over 250,000 casualties, and Churchill was blamed for the catastrophe. His reputation was in tatters, and many believed his political career was effectively ruined. For most people, such a monumental failure would have been the end of their career, a moment to retreat, hide, and apologize. But Churchill didn't do that. Instead of allowing failure to define him, he chose to use it as a foundation to rebuild and strengthen himself. Churchill didn't hide from the disaster or make excuses. He took full responsibility for the failure, acknowledging his role in the debacle. But rather than dwelling on the loss, he saw it as an opportunity to learn, grow, and improve. After his resignation from the Admiralty, many expected him to retreat into obscurity. But instead, he took to the front lines during World War I, actively participating in military operations. By leading from the front, he demonstrated to the soldiers that he wasn't just a leader in theory. He was willing to face the same dangers and challenges that they did. This act of courage and humility wasn't just a way to redeem himself in the eyes of his men, but it was also a way to reignite his own sense of purpose and resolve. Winston Churchill didn't become the man we remember by simply watching videos or reading books. He became Churchill through relentless action, constant self-improvement, and an unshakable belief in his abilities. If you want to improve yourself, remember that it's a journey, not a destination. You can't become Churchill overnight, but you can start by applying some of these principles to your own life. And who knows, maybe one day your actions will speak louder than words, just like Churchill's did. See you in the next one.